up, everybody? It's DFS Dudes back for the Tuesday edition of Deep Dive. Today is February the 4th. Only a 4-game slate to get into today, so it's going to be a brief deep dive today. Coming out a little bit later than normal, but the lock time is 7:30 Eastern tonight, not 7 Eastern, so kind of on par with what we normally do. But like I said, only 4 games to get into on this slate. And, last night, content was on point. Speaking of content, make sure you're checking out all the content being produced on the site. Make sure that you're checking out Derek Hill's PGA Core Plays. This week, the PGA Tour stops at Pebble Beach, just up the road from my house. Always loving the PGA is at Pebble Beach. Pebble Beach, one of the coolest places on the planet, man. Just really is just absolutely a gorgeous place. And if you're into golf, there's not a better place in the world than Pebble Beach. So Derek will break that down in his Core Plays. That'll be up later on tonight. We've got Christopher Robin, who's writing NHL, doing a really good job giving you in-depth analysis and recommendations as far as line stacks, teams, giving you example lineups that you can roll into your tournament and cash game plays. And then Tyler Miller with, the Super Bowl ended. We've got XFL. You guys are asking for some XFL content, so we'll roll some XFL stuff out. But the next big kind of thing after the Super Bowl is always the Daytona 500 and the start of the NASCAR season. Tyler, just a beast with the NASCAR content he brings. Up now on the site under the setup on NASCAR, you can find his NASCAR 101 article previewing the season just a little bit and giving you kind of an in-depth analysis as to how to play and how the scoring works on each of the sites, FanDuel and DraftKings, the differences between the two, what the scoring categories are, how you build lineups, what the formats are, etc. So you can soak that up and be add another sport to kind of your repertoire of daily fantasy. Daily fantasy NASCAR is a lot of fun. Won some money last year. I think I won second place in the tournament early on last year for like 10 grand. NASCAR's fun. It kind of emulates the single game slate for other sports. It's one race, pick your drivers, watch them go race. I never, ever, ever watched NASCAR really at all, maybe beyond changing the channel or channel surfing by it and catching a couple laps. I never watched NASCAR until last year after I started playing daily fantasy. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun. You got 30-something drivers on a track going over, sometimes 190 miles an hour, and, got a bunch of lineups with guys in there, and you're rooting for drivers, and it's pretty fun. So check that out. So, NASCAR, we've got hockey, we've got basketball, we've got golf, all of that up on the site right now. Make sure you check all of that stuff out for all your daily fantasy needs. Let's get into tonight's slate, kind of with the view from 8,000 feet. Where's the over-unders at? With only 4 games, Milwaukee and New Orleans. 246 is the over-under in this one. And here is something to pay very close attention to. Very close attention to. The spread is 6.5. The Spurs are at the Lakers. That's the second highest over-under, and the spread is 12. The over-under in the Spurs-Laker game is 227.5. 18.5 points higher, if my math is right, is what the spread is for, maybe that's 19.5 points. 19.5 points higher is what the spread is for Milwaukee and New Orleans. You're going to need exposure to that game. And sometimes when there's really popular spots like Dame going out of his mind over the last week and a half, sometimes people don't pay the full attention, or injury news, etc., can kind of lose track of the site that there's one game that's 19 points higher from an implied total standpoint than the other games on the slate. James Harden is one of them, right? James Harden's going to be extremely chalky with no Russell Westbrook, so you kind of sift through that shit. And, there's things you can kind of sift through. And if we were to get kind of prior to lock, kind of a string of people that are being ruled out where value's opening up, it can get lost that there's one game on the slate that is 19 points higher than the other 3. So, don't lose sight of that fact. You're going to need exposure to this game. You're going to need exposure to it. And we'll talk about that game in a minute. Let's look at matchups. There's not a deep dive to kind of take a look into in matchups, but Eric Bledsoe, I think, is the top point guard on the slate. It's a really good matchup against the Pelicans. He has a usage rate of 25.6. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 40.6 fantasy points per game. That's a bump of 9.2 over his average for the season. The shooting guard position, obviously, James Harden will be the default point guard tonight, playing the shooting guard position, but Eric Gordon will start most likely and play the shooting guard position. Houston has an implied total of 118.5. It's the best matchup for a shooting guard on the slate. Granted, his number of the last 2 weeks is a bit inflated of 34.6 because one of those games he had 66 fantasy points. But he's averaging 34.6 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks as opposed to 23.7. The one thing that's not going to be that inflated is the minutes, up to 30.1 minutes per game, and should see a little bump in that and play closer to 33, 34 minutes tonight in a starting role without Westbrook. The small forward position, Ben McLemore, get a bump to him. Miles Bridges gets a bump in this one, in my opinion, as well. Lower over-under in that Charlotte game. Chris Middleton is also in a really good spot. From a minute standpoint, Miles Bridges plays over 30 minutes a game. Chris Middleton on a nice run as of late. Over the last 2 weeks, has averaged 49.6 fantasy points per game with a 26.7 usage rate. The power forward position, you're not going to see another usage rate higher than this one. Giannis is 39.4. He's 39.4. We're going to get into kind of lineup construction in just a minute. The center position, on this slate, you've got a couple of centers that you can possibly consider, right? I think you have to throw Dwight Howard in the mix because he's just been really, really good. And, he probably is not going to share the floor with LaMarcus Aldridge unless JaVale McGee were to get in foul trouble. Then he could share some minutes with Aldridge on the floor. But, Jakob Poeltl, and I like the physicality of Dwight Howard over Jakob Poeltl. I just do. Whiteside against Jokic. Whiteside's been really, really good this year, but Jokic, if Jamal Murray is going to be out, and we may not even hear that prior to lock, Jokic, in my opinion, is probably in the best spot on the slate. Whiteside's overall, he's a decent defender, but Portland has been just absolutely eaten up by centers all year long. And I kind of mentioned this in the morning shoot around. Whiteside's done a better job this year of not getting into early foul trouble. I still don't like to play Whiteside on the road, but he's done a better job with that, and I think that's part of the reason why centers are eating up Portland is I think Whiteside's just a little less aggressive on the defensive end, knowing and being conscious of the fact that he's a hacky type player. Grabby, hacky, however you want to put it. Some bench players on this 4-game slate that you could possibly look at. Pat Connaughton, mentioned him. Marvin Williams could possibly be a guy that gets some run today. And Monte Morris if Jamal Murray is out. Those are kind of the three best bench type players. Gary Harris plays a lot of minutes. Josh Hart plays a lot of minutes. JJ Redick plays a lot of minutes. Josh Hart and JJ Redick are two really good tournament plays, in my opinion. It's a very high over-under. And then Kyle Kuzma also plays a fair amount of minutes. But by far, Josh Hart averages 28.2 minutes off the bench. Redick, 27.4 minutes off the bench. So, those guys are kind of by far, they're in the highest over-under on the slate. When you look at how we want to kind of construct lineups today, I really think that the first guy you start with is the point guard position, and I really like Eric Bledsoe. It's 6,300. It's the highest over-under on the slate, and I like pairing him up with Giannis at 11.5. Those are kind of the first two guys that I've started to plug into lineups, and then gone ahead and paired that with James Harden. And James Harden, in my opinion, is just you can't afford to fade James Harden today. You just can't. You can't afford to fade him. Not in this matchup. Not where Charlotte's such a terrible rebounding team, and we know James Harden, the amount of triple doubles he's put together over the last couple of years. He will get you rebounds. He will get you steals. He will get you, the assists and all of that. It kind of comes with James Harden. But the rebound part, I think he gets a bump in that today for the simple fact that Charlotte is so bad in the rebounding category. They're just not good. And, you don't have to look at numbers to tell you that. You just watch them play. They're just not good. They're not a good rebounding team. From a news standpoint, on this particular slate, there's not a lot going on at the moment. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of information Other than, Pat Connaughton listed as available to play, we haven't seen a ton of information come out as of yet. We have not. So, we haven't seen anything on PJ Washington. We haven't seen anything on Jamal Murray, who's questionable, and those are kind of the two big ones for me because Marvin Williams obviously could see 20 to 22 minutes if PJ Washington's going to be out. Could be a possible good play, a guy who can run and gun on the perimeter as well, play pick and roll a little bit. So the news, we really haven't seen too much. So the question that you have to get into is kind of when you're building lineups today, I think that Bledsoe is the guy on Milwaukee that you build into your core to get exposure to at 6.3, and then you can pair him with Giannis. That's fine, right? But, I don't mind also pairing Brook Lopez in here in the center spot at 5,800. It's a good salary saver, and then play, maybe Anthony Davis instead of Giannis. Anthony Davis is 10-2. This is such a fair price. It's such a fair price. You've got him at 10-2. The other guy that's a really fair price as well is Lillard. Lillard's price is only 10-8 on FanDuel, or 10-9 on FanDuel. It's so cheap for what he's been doing. You look at Harden 11-6, and you compare like the last 5 games. Harden goes 67, 72, 36, sit out, 30, 43, 50. He's 11-6. Look at Lillard. There's no sit-outs in that mix. 72, 78, 59, 78, 64, 84. Lillard's too cheap. He's underpriced. No matter what, right? No matter what, Lillard is underpriced. Period, point blank, end of story. For his recent and when I say underpriced, we have to take a look into what I'm talking about, right? Just quickly. That pricing algorithm on FanDuel and DraftKings takes into account many different things. But a couple of things they take into consideration is where their price is relevant to their recent production. Another thing is ownership. Dame has been 30 to 70% owned in tournaments depending on the slate. 72, 78, 59, 78, 64, 84. That's an 8x, 6x, 7x, 6x, 7x, 7x on his price tag. So knowing that it's the past is what the algorithm is evaluating, and it'll also take into account, predicting future ownership if there's a gap in days between games. On back-to-backs, you'll see guys priced down, or you'll see them stay the same, or possibly priced up. But more often than not, on a back-to-back set, a guy's price won't change because they haven't had a chance to let their algorithm run and adjust the price. But this isn't the case with Dame. He's 10-9. And on a slate full of stars and pay-up spots in a matchup against Denver on the road, I don't think Dame's very high owned. And if he's going to go out there and get you, 55 fantasy points tonight at 10-9, and Giannis gets you the same 55 or 60, Damian Lillard's the better play. Granted, you have Anthony Davis and LeBron James also on the slate. You have James Harden also on the slate. But Dame just seems like he's in a really good spot. So when you start to construct the lineups, the guy I like to start with is Bledsoe, right? Let's talk about value that I see on this slate. Is there any obvious value on this slate? Austin Rivers at 4,000 is a possible value play. Cody Martin at 3,600 is a possible value play. Eric Gordon at 4,900 is a possible value play. Cody Zeller at 4,900 is a possible value play. Remember, Houston is playing PJ Tucker at the center spot. So there's some possible value in this Charlotte game. You can see what I'm talking about when I'm telling you to keep in mind that New Orleans and Milwaukee are by 19 points the highest over-under on the slate. There's value in a different game. So attention and roster spots are going to be taken up by a different game. Can you get the same value out of Cody Martin that you could out of Josh Hart. Well, Josh Hart's priced $1,300 higher on FanDuel, so you're eating up a little bit more salary. But my point to you is there's value to be had on this slate that can allow you to pay up for 3 spots. So you've got Zeller at the center spot, he's $4,900. You got Dwight Howard, he's $4,400. You got JaVale McGee, he's $4,000. That's all possible value. Derek Favors is $5,500 in a game we like. PJ Tucker is $4,800, getting a lot of minutes. Kyle Kuzma's only $4,200. You've got Ariza out there at $4,500, who's played extremely well since coming over. Daniel House, Eric Gordon, $4,900, $5,100. Shooting guard position, you got DiVincenzo, you got Gary Harris, Caldwell Pope, Reddick, Hart. All these guys are under $5,000. Ben McLemore, been on a really good run with him. He's a guy who possibly gets a bump today. So there's value to be had on the slate, right? So you can definitely pay up. Now, where do you pay up at, right? And to me, the 3 guys that if I could get them into my lineup tonight that I would love to get is Lillard to the point guard position, the default kind of free square with James Harden, and Anthony Davis. I just, with a full complement of minutes at 10-2, that price is too cheap for Anthony Davis. And we look at his recent game log, he only has 41.8 against Sacramento. He only has 46.4 against Philadelphia. Brooklyn, 36.2 and 49.5 against the Knicks. He came back against Boston at 23.8. And the second half of a back-to-back against Brooklyn, he only played 26 minutes. Days rest, played 38 minutes, had 5 days off with the passing of Kobe Bryant, comes back, plays 38 minutes against Portland, 37 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks, and a steal. And they blew the doors off Sacramento. He had 21, 4, and 6 with a block in 29 minutes. It's too cheap for Anthony Davis. It's just too cheap. So the question is, I think that for me, and I'm going to play 3-entry max tournaments tonight, I'm going to try to lock in the 3 playing core of Lillard, Bledsoe, and Harden. And then I may pay up for Giannis in one, and I may pay up for Anthony Davis in one. The problem is when you pay up for Giannis with his core on FanDuel, you only got $3,900 left to fill out your roster, and it doesn't allow you to get all the value you need. At the center spot, there's not really a guy I'm comfortable with that's in that price range for a tournament tonight. At the shooting guard position, we're waiting on news, but there's maybe 2 guys, Ben McLemore at $3,800, that I would really trust if I knew Austin Rivers was going to be ruled out. Cody Martin. If you don't know who Cody Martin is, Martin has really taken over the Nicholas Batum role. You look at the last 3 games, he played 23 minutes against Washington, 22.2 fantasy points, 27 minutes against the Spurs, 28 minutes against Orlando, 36.1 fantasy points. He's $3,600. He just went 10x on this price tag. The power forward position, from a value standpoint, there's not a lot of guys down here, okay? Michael Porter's out. Paul Millsap is out. The best value, overall value, is Jeremy Grant. He's the best overall value here. Derek Favors at $5,500, Zion at $7,100. You can't get both those guys in your lineup if you want to pay up for Lillard, Harden, and Giannis. You just can't. But those are the guys you want to give the consideration to. From a value standpoint, Marvin Williams is the only guy that would make any sense. But the problem with Marvin Williams is the minutes with P.J. Washington out have been inconsistent. 23 and 17. And not really a lot going on, 4 points and 2 points. P.J. Tucker's $4,800. He's too expensive for what we need to accomplish. And then you look at the center position. If you're going to go anywhere at the center position, really the lowest you could go down to, in my opinion, is JaVale McGee. I'm not comfortable with Willie Hernangomez or Bismack Biyombo. Cody Zeller's the guy that I would load up in this spot. If you felt really risky and you want to take a chance, I guess you could. Willie Hernangomez, you look at it, he played 21, 18, 19, 18 minutes over the last 4 games. Had a couple of good games, and if you go back to his time when he was the New York Knicks, Hernangomez is on a nice little run as far as fantasy production goes. Really been out of sight, out of mind since he's been in Charlotte, except for like the last 4 games. So if you wanted to, feeling frisky with that and you want to take a shot, go ahead. Bismack Biyombo, it's the same type of situation. We've seen him start, we've seen him get minutes, but in the past 4 games, he hasn't played at all. 0 minutes. None. So, how do you know that tonight's not Biyombo's night? We have no idea. We have no idea. And even when you look at Zeller, how do you know tonight's Zeller's night? The minutes are stable, it looks like, right? You look at the last 4 games, 28, 24, 29, 26. So call it 25 minutes. Zeller's the guy that I feel the best with as a pay down value spot. He's 4,900. That leaves us 3,700 to fill our roster out with. We removed Giannis from that equation. We have 5,600 to fill it out with. What does Anthony Davis do? He's 10-3, gives us 4,100. Can we fill our roster out with those 3 guys in the lineup? You look at the small forward position. Who are we talking about for value? Well, you'd really like to get Eric Gordon in there. It's who you'd really like to get. 4,900 for Eric Gordon. He's not going to fit in our makeup. There are 2 guys. I wouldn't use both of them. I might use one of them in one of my lineups in a 3-entry max that you could talk about, and that's Rudy Gay and Thabo Sefolosha. Rudy Gay is a very difficult player to recommend to play. You don't know with any player on the San Antonio Spurs what you're ever going to get. You never know what you're going to get with them. And with Rudy Gay, he took 2 shots in his last game. It's hard. 14, 17, 21, 22, 6, 15. Where's the minutes at? How do you know he's going to play? You just don't know. Huge Kobe guy, by the way, going into Staples Center tonight. Huge Kobe guy. But Thabo, you take a look at Thabo, who's been a really proven defensive player, Atlanta, Utah, etc. Played 14 and 18 minutes in the last 2 games. Possible play at 3,600 for Thabo Sefolosha. But you can see how difficult it is to build a lineup and get these, 3 of these guys with Harden in your lineup, right? It's very difficult. So as good as Lillard is a guy that I would put in one of these lineups. I would put Lillard in one because I just think that people, let's look at value by position. Kind of the last thing we'll do with lineup construction. Lonzo Ball 6,900, Eric Bledsoe 6,300, Rozier 6,200, Austin Rivers is 4,000. You've got Monte Morris and Dejounte Murray in the $55,000 to $5,000 range. So, and if Jamal Murray is to play with no minutes restriction, he's 6,300. Jamal Murray will be owned by nobody. Monte Morris will be owned by nobody because we probably won't get any news on their situation until after lock. But there's value to be had here at the point guard position. And it's much more plausible to think that people will go with a combination of Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe, Austin Rivers, Lonzo Ball, Austin Rivers, something in that nature, and not Damian Lillard. So in one of these lineups, I would get Lillard as the guy I paired with Harden. Because of the fact that I think people are going to pay up at other spots, because when you look at shooting guards from a value standpoint, let's look at who's really in play outside of James Harden. Middleton 7,200, DeRozan 7,600, Drew Holiday 7,500, Devontae Graham is 6,700. Those are the big 4. Now Gary Harris, Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, Ben McLemore, Cody Martin, Malik Monk, all these guys you don't feel extremely confident plugging into your lineup. So the odds of people paying up for two of these players, the shooting guard position, I would say are really good. So there's not a lot of value at the shooting guard position. Okay. Let's look at small forward. Eric Gordon was probably going to be default chalk. Carmelo Anthony's only 5,600. Bridges 5,400. Ingram down to 7,600. Ariza, who people are comfortable with, is 4,500. I can see lineup construction, a lot of it pairing Harden and Giannis. High over-under game. There's depth at small forward. As far as good players at small forward, not a lot of value. Eric Gordon leads the way clearly. Daniel House second, 5,100. And then a couple of guys you're comfortable with, like Carmelo at 56, Ariza at 45. You're comfortable there. Power forward. PJ Tucker's 4,800. It's a value spot that people are going to be popular about, people are going to like. Jeremy Grant, I mentioned, no Millsap, no Porter. 6,100. Favors 5,500 high over under game. Zion will probably be lower owned tonight because of that. Let me get exposure to the game. I spend 71 on Zion or 55 on Favors. I can fit this lineup this way. I want to build it if I use Favors. So my point to you is, because there's other players in the mid-range value at point guard, it's going to be contrarian to play Damian Lillard. And that's why I'm saying in one of those builds, I would put Lillard in there if I'm in a 3-entry max and pair Lillard with Harden and then kind of balance out the rest of your roster. The center position. Cody Zeller. If you're feeling freaky and you want to throw Hernan Gomez in there, go ahead, but understand what you're doing. It's a tournament-only play. So let's now that we've talked about it, where the value's at, what's contrarian in my opinion, what'll be chalky in my opinion, how does it shake out, right? So we know that Harden is the default chalk. I've said Bledsoe's my favorite play at the point guard position. So you put those two guys in on FanDuel, you got $6,000 to fill out your roster. You look, at the small forward position, let's just plug Eric Gordon in, okay? Eric Gordon at small forward 2, we're very comfortable with that, in a good spot. There's no Russell Westbrook, a couple extra shots for him. Power forward position. Jeremy Grant at 6,100. Derek Favors at 5,500. Anthony Davis very, very cheap at 10,200. PJ Tucker, 4,800. Let's throw, for the sake of it, start off high here, and we'll go we'll throw Zion and pair him with PJ Tucker. Let's try to save money here at the center position. And with Clint Capella out, let's talk about Cody Zeller at 4,900. So our lineup right now has Bledsoe, Harden, Gordon, Williamson, Tucker, Zeller. We have 6,800 to fill out the rest of our roster. Okay? We talked about Lonzo Ball. We'll plug Lonzo Ball in this lineup. Shooting guard position. It's not possible to get the pairing of Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton. But one guy that I really like in this spot at 6,700 is Devontae Graham, because point guards have smashed Houston when it's come to Houston playing without Russell Westbrook. You have 6,800 left, and the only guy we can get is Will Barton. So we've got Lonzo, Bledsoe, Harden, Devontae Graham, Will Barton, Eric Gordon, Zion Williamson, PJ Tucker, Cody Zeller. So just building this lineup out based off guys we like and then fitting the pieces in the puzzle. We have 1, 2, 3 players from the highest over-under on the slate, 0 exposure to the last game on the slate, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys from the Charlotte-Houston game. I think a lot of lineups are going to shake out this way. So how do you be different? How do you be different? I think the first thing you do is you load up 2 superstars. What are the first 2 you want? Well, let's take the most expensive 2. James Harden and Giannis. The point guard position. Who's the cheapest guy that we feel comfortable with? Austin Rivers is going to play today. He's $4,000. He's not on the final injury list. You take a look back at Russell Westbrook. When was the last time Russell Westbrook set out? It was against Utah. Austin Rivers played 40 minutes in that game. So let's throw Austin Rivers in this mix. So we've got Austin Rivers and James Harden together here. And here comes, the chalk. Let's get Gordon in there, right? So Rivers, Harden, Gordon. We like Cody Zeller. Pay down for him. Where else can we pay down, right? There's not any more spots to really pay down. We only have $5,700 left. Point guard. We like Bledsoe. Let's throw Bledsoe in there. We got $5,600 left. Power forward. We can throw Derek Favors in there at $5,500. You go up to Jeremy Grant, $6,100. Both guys seem to be in really good spots. Shooting guard position. We got $5,200 left to fill out a shooting guard spot. The only guy we can fit in is Malik Monk at $4,600. We leave $600 on the table. And once again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys from the Charlotte-Houston game. And 1, 2, 3 guys from the highest over-under on the slate, again by 19 points. And no exposure to the late game. So what happens if we deconstruct this again, right? One last time. Let's pair Damian Lillard and James Harden. Okay? Who is my top overall power forward on the slate? My top overall power forward at the moment is PJ Tucker. My number 2 is Jeremy Grant. So let's plug those 2 guys at the power forward position. Not a deep spot tonight. Grant, $6,100. PJ Tucker, $4,800. My top overall center on the slate is Jokic, but we're not going to be able to pay up for Jokic in this spot, constructing our roster this way. So we default again back to Zeller or Dwight Howard. For the sake of argument, Cody Zeller's in the better spot. So we'll plug Zeller in and see if we need to adjust. All kinds of news seems to be breaking now that I'm doing the podcast. Let's take a look and see if anything is for today. Ben McLemore will start. There's some value opening up. Russell Westbrook has officially been ruled out. So let's plug Zeller in. $4,900. It's really impossible when you look at the small forward position not to say that the top overall play at the small forward spot is not Giannis. He's in the highest over-under. The guy's the remix of LeBron James. And what I mean by that is he gets assists, he gets you rebounds, and he scores the basketball. He does all 3. We just talked about Ben McLemore, and Ben McLemore is entering the starting lineup today. So at that shooting guard position, do we want to pair Ben McLemore with James Harden at $3,800 or play Eric Gordon? Or do we want to run a full Houston stack? Or do we upgrade from PJ Tucker to Derek Favors? Derek Favors will start as center and he'll play against, Brook Lopez. Let's put Favors in there. So we've got Lillard, Harden, McLemore, Grant, Favors, Zeller. Let's get some exposure now. If we're not going to get Giannis, then we have to get Eric Bledsoe. The small forward position. We only have $5,400 left here. There's no late game exposure at the small forward position that we can get. You've got Melo at 56 and Bridges at 54, and then Daniel House at 51. You can get Melo and Eric Gordon. And this is not a comfortable looking lineup, right? You've got Lillard, Bledsoe, Harden, McLemore, Anthony Gordon, Grant, Favors, Zeller. Not a comfortable looking lineup. There's just not a lot of ways to build that does, and this is my point in doing this with you. There's not a lot of ways to build. And remember, I started this podcast by saying the highest over under on this slate, and by 19 points, is Milwaukee, New Orleans. Can you stack that game? I know that's the next question in your mind. Let's try it. Point guard, Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe. Shooting guard, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. Small forward, Giannis, Ingram. Power forward, Zion. Not going to work out, but Zion, you don't have a power forward to really play in this spot on the Milwaukee side. Center, Brook Lopez. We have $100 left and we haven't filled every position. So who is the best value on the slate that we could possibly pay down for? And we don't have James Harden. Downgrade Williamson to Favors. Downgrade Giannis. Actually, I would downgrade Ingram, to be honest with you. Giannis is a higher usage player. So downgrade Ingram to Eric Gordon. Power forward position, we now have $4,400. We can't get PJ Tucker. We're looking at Kyle Kuzma. So, there's our stack. Game stack. Ball, Bledsoe, Holiday, Middleton, Giannis, Gordon, Favors, Kuzma, Lopez. We have no James Harden. We only paid up for Giannis. How do you go through this thing and start to stack it up and get the right value? And then this is where we're going to end this. I'm going to go with Bledsoe because he's cheaper. Bledsoe and then Austin Rivers. 4,000. 40 minutes against Utah last time these two teams that Houston played without Westbrook. I'm going to add Harden in there. We're going to take out Brook Lopez and we're going to put in Cody Zeller. We're 100 short right now. We have one player for New Orleans and 3 players for Milwaukee. Is there a paydown spot at the shooting guard position? Who's the paydown that we really like? Talked about Josh Hart in a lot of minutes. Let's put Josh Hart in instead of Middleton. That frees up some cash. We can go and get Jeremy Grant. So now we have our power forward spot. We have Jeremy Grant. We have 6,200 left. We can get Derek Favors. We have 0 late game exposure, but this is what it looks like to build a stack of the highest over under on the slate. With the value that's kind of there with Houston playing against Charlotte. You've got Zeller, and if you want to go down from Hart and maybe see if we can upgrade somewhere else, you can go all the way down to Cody Martin at 3,600, who's playing minutes. That gives us an additional 1,600 that you could go get Zion with, I believe. Yes, so you could have Zion and Grant. So we have no late game exposure here. And this is what this lineup looks like. Bledsoe, Rivers, Harden, Martin, Giannis, Gordon, Zion, Grant, Zeller. So what you're going to have to do today is figure out this question. Do I need Giannis, and this is what it goes back to, right? Do I need Giannis or do I play Anthony Davis? And I think the answer to that question is play 3 entry max tournaments, and build a couple of different ways. I would use a lineup similar to this, and I would trade out Giannis for Lillard and Giannis for Anthony Davis. We know where the value is at. We've covered it in detail. That's where I'm at on this slate. It's not pretty. But what I wanted to walk you through was how easy it is to get lost and kind of how the funnel of information and what's available will take you to a certain game and take your eye off the ball, which is the highest over-under on this slate by 19 points is not yielding a lot of value. And it's not the way that lineups are being constructed today. It doesn't funnel you in the direction of this game. It funnels you to Charlotte and Houston and wants you to fade San Antonio and the Lakers. So if you want to be different, that's what you focus on this slate, in my opinion. I'll be back tomorrow with a fuller slate of games. Good luck on all your contests tonight. Make sure you check out all the content on the site, dfscheatsheet.com. Until tomorrow, be cool, keep it cashing. Peace out.